Welcome back, everyone, to today's Explainer. Today, we're zeroing in on a massive pillar of secure system design, the principle of least privilege. Specifically, we're going to look at how you can rigorously limit the blast radius of a security breach. This is easily one of the most powerful, yet surprisingly most frequently violated concepts in all of cybersecurity. Seriously, whether you're architecting software, leading an engineering team, or just trying to lock down your data, wrapping your head around this will totally change how you view permissions. I am super excited to get into this with you, so let's just dive right in.
Okay, here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start granular with the core rule in part 1, the least privilege principle. Then, part 2 is all about applying that practically. Part 3 will tackle the very real threat of privilege escalation and a modern solution called JIT access. Part 4 covers how to handle common objections, plus a really handy implementation checklist. And finally, we'll wrap up by zooming out for a quick recap of our entire cybersecurity toolkit. All right, Section 1, the least privileged principle. Let's get a firm grasp on the core concept and what we actually mean by the blast radius. So, the principle of least privilege is a pretty strict rule. It dictates that any entity must be granted absolutely no more than the minimum set of permissions it needs to do its job right now. And notice I say entity, right? Because we're talking about human users, sure, but also service accounts, background processes, microservices, the whole shebang. It's not about what might be convenient for them tomorrow. It's not about what they might need for a totally different project next year. It is strictly what is necessary at this very second. You've got to remember, whenever you give an entity more access than it strictly needs, you aren't just being nice or removing friction. You're actually actively expanding your attack surface. Literally, every single extra permission is just a loaded weapon, sitting there waiting for an attacker to compromise the account and turn it against you.
Now, picture this concept of the blast radius. It's a great metaphor. If an attacker manages to breach a tightly scoped read-only account, the blast radius is tiny. The absolute worst damage they can do is read one specific table. Not great, but contained. But imagine if that exact same account had been lazily handed unnecessary admin privileges. Now, that same attacker can read, dump, or completely wipe your entire database. The difference there isn't just minor, it's catastrophic. By limiting privileges, you are directly limiting your blast radius.
Moving on to Section 2, applying least privilege practically. Let's ground this theory in some day-to-day reality. Let's look at what least privilege actually looks like out in the wild. Take human users, for example. A brand new day one developer doesn't need direct access to your production database. Their absolute minimum required access is just the staging environment. Simple. Now, for automated services, say a reporting microservice that crunches weekly analytics, well, it only needs read-only access. Giving that service write permissions introduces totally unnecessary risk, and it machines speed too. And finally, think about your actual code. Your database connection string shouldn't be logging in as the root user. That's a huge red flag. It should use an account locked down to selective CRUD operations. Create, read, update, delete on very specific tables while strictly blocking destructive stuff like drop table or grant.
But of course, the real world is usually a lot messier, isn't it? Here's the terrifying reality of overprivileged access. Stuff that gives you a heart attack during Monday morning code reviews. We're talking applications lazily running as root, which means if the app gets popped, the attacker owns the whole server. Or how about a single database user shared across 10 different microservices? One little SQL injection flaw in one service, and the whole company goes down. Or all employees having default access to all customer data, turning a single phishing email into a massive breach. And my personal favorite, hard-coding master API keys right in the front-end JavaScript, just sitting there for anyone who hits F12. Every single one of these is a massive, severe violation that creates a totally unnecessary attack surface.
So, how do attackers exploit this? That's Section 3, escalation and JIT access, the threat and the modern solution. You see, privilege escalation is basically an attacker's natural instinct. They get a tiny foothold, and then they immediately try to climb. Vertical escalation happens when a regular low-level user exploits some vulnerability to magically become a system administrator. Horizontal escalation is a bit different. That's when an attacker accessing user A's account figures out a tricky way to peek at user B's data, staying at that exact same privilege level. Here's the hard truth about this. Least privilege doesn't just magically prevent these escalation attempts from happening, but it creates a really low ceiling. Think about it. If the absolute highest privilege an attacker can reach through vertical escalation is just a scoped, read-only service account, Well, their attack is severely crippled right out of the gate. And that brings us to a frankly brilliant solution known as JIT, or just-in-time access. Honestly, this is the modern evolution of least privilege. Instead of having these standing, static admin accounts just sitting around waiting to be stolen, we just eliminate standing privileges entirely. Let's say a developer legitimately needs to debug a live production issue. They follow these 4 automated steps. 1. They request elevated access through a portal. 2. That request triggers a rapid logged approval workflow. 3. The access is granted, but, and this is key, only for a strictly limited time, say 30 minutes. 4. The second that timer runs out, the system automatically revokes the access. Boom. The window of opportunity for an attacker slams completely shut.
All right, Section 4, Objections and Implementation Checklist. Let's tackle the inevitable pushback and figure out how to actually take action.
So the absolute most common complaint you're going to hear is least privilege slows us down. It kills our velocity. Well, the brutal professional truth is that this is mostly a misconception. The real answer here is automation. Look, if getting necessary access requires some ridiculous manual email chain bouncing between 3 different managers and a 48-hour wait, you don't actually have a security principle problem. You have a broken process problem. By rolling out automated approval workflows and just-in-time provisioning, you absolutely can maintain your development velocity without torching your security posture.
Then there's objection number 2, usually from smaller companies. But we're a small startup. Everyone here is trusted. Okay, the absolutely crucial point here is this. Trust is not a security control. It's a feeling. Some of the most damaging insider threats come from highly trusted employees who simply had their credentials stolen by an outsider. And hey, beyond malice, even the most loyal, highly trusted employees just make mistakes. A trusted, brilliant dev with a superuser account can totally accidentally drop a production database table on a Friday afternoon. It happens. Least privilege protects your org against both external bad actors and internal honest mistakes. Okay, so how do we actually make this happen? Here's your concrete checklist. First things first, audit your existing access. Find out who actually has what right now. Second, flip the script. Default to deny. Start everyone at 0 access. Third, use roles and groups. Please do not assign bespoke permissions to individual people. Fourth, you've got to review these assignments regularly. And finally, log and monitor all privileged actions. You have to remember, privilege creep, where people just slowly accumulate more and more access over time, compounds exactly like technical debt. You have to actively prune it. All right, let's bring it all home. Section 5, Cybersecurity Fundamentals Recap. Time to test your conceptual toolkit. If you've been following along with us, you've now got the ultimate toolkit for building secure system architecture. You know, the 6 major attack types you need to anticipate. You totally understand the CIA triad, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. You know better than to confuse authentication, which is proving who you are, with authorization, which is what you're actually allowed to do. You understand defense in depth, making sure you use layered controls so a single point of failure doesn't ruin your week. And now you've officially mastered least privilege, ensuring that when a failure inevitably does happen, that blast radius is tightly, safely contained. Let's do a quick knowledge check to lock this in. Question 1. What is the core idea of the principle of least privilege? Is it A, give everyone admin access so nothing is ever blocked? B, grant only the minimum access needed to perform a specific task? Or C, just use the same standard permissions for all users to simplify your management? Lock in your guess. And the answer is B, absolutely. Grant only the minimum access needed to perform a task. Any access that goes beyond the absolute minimum required right now is simply an unnecessary risk that an attacker is going to be incredibly happy to exploit. Okay, question 2. Let's look at non-human entities for a second. Which of these is an example of applying least privilege to services? A, all microservices share a single database admin account. B, a reporting service has strict read-only access to the database. Or C, every service runs as root for maximum reliability. You guessed it, the answer is B again, a reporting service with read-only access. Sharing admin accounts across your microservices or running services as root? Those are massive, systemic violations of the principle. They are exactly what turn minor little software bugs into total, catastrophic system failures. All right, our final question. Let's tie the very specific threat of compromised credentials back to our macro-level concepts. Which concept protects against a situation where a single stolen password leads to a full system compromise? Is it A, the CIA triad,
B, types of cyber attacks, or C, defense in depth? The answer is C, defense in depth. Look, while a stolen password obviously means your authentication layer has failed, it's your layered controls like multi-factor authentication, network segmentation, and strict least privilege authorization checks that step in to stop that blast radius from expanding any further. You never, ever rely on just one wall to keep the bad guys out. Well, there you have it. You've mastered the fundamentals, you understand the threats, you understand the layers of defense, and you know exactly how to rigorously limit the blast radius through least privilege. But hey, knowing the tools is only half the battle, right? Actually building with them out in the real world is the true challenge. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Now that you have this incredibly powerful conceptual toolkit at your disposal, how will you seamlessly apply these foundations to every single stage of your secure software development lifecycle? Really think about that the next time you're reviewing some code. Keep learning, stay focused, and I will see you in the next explainer.